All right, everyone, we're going to be getting started in about 2 minutes. So as soon as Roland Frazier joins us, we'll get started. If you are just now joining us, hi, everyone. Howdy, howdy. Just tell me something, list one thing that you are loving about the program so far. So just one thing, just put it in there. And it can't be that you love the fact that I screw up on emails and I don't have enough coffee. So it can't be that. But put something really, really fun in there that you really are enjoying about the program so far. I want to hear what you got. This is awesome. Marty, feeling positive about the future. Great. Peter, seeing deals in motion. Absolutely. Scott, loving the interaction. Mark, loving the group feedback. There is. I will say, Mark, you're right. There is a ton of group feedback going on right now. And I just love how all of you are supporting one another and jumping in there and answering questions. And that's amazing. Richie, massive over deliver. We hope you are enjoying the bonuses. And that's not the end. We have more. So stay tuned. You'll get more. Scott, I love it. It's all new to me and something I've wanted to do. Philip, great interaction. Better than an MBA in just 8 weeks. Very nice, Ron. That's fantastic. David, how are you doing? Good to see you. Marco, the community, very collaborative and sharp minds all in one place. That is fantastic. I am so glad. Let's see here. Anyone else? Anyone else? Got some great feedback. This is good. I want to hear feedback. So anything, if you're just now joining us, we want you to post one thing that you are already loving about the program so far in the chat box. So if you could do that, that'd be great. Again, clarifying, it can't be that you just love the thousands of emails I'm sending you or the mistakes I've made. So I apologize in advance for all that. A lot of moving parts. So so glad you guys are here in this community, and thank you for your patience as we build it out. We're so excited to be working with all of you. Kyle, community is everything. Great. I'm so glad. David, you love my thousands of emails. Thank you. That's amazing. Mike, tons of bonuses. I just mentioned earlier that we've got a ton more, so don't be surprised when you see more of them just trickling in. So that'll be fun for everyone. Jonathan, the action everyone's taking will help us all level up much more quicker. I agree with you, Jonathan. I've been seeing so many great posts the past 24 hours and people just jumping in there and answering questions and supporting one another. So that is truly fantastic. And I'm super glad that everyone is getting involved in the community. So thank you for doing that. Let's see here. Randy, you loved the 23 templates and checklists. Yay. Everyone was asking about that. So I'm really, really glad that you guys enjoyed that. Let's see here. Let's see if I've got anyone else. Let's see. Let me see. Roland's having a little bit of trouble logging in. Hold on one second. Let me try to get him a link. Sorry about that, guys. Give me 1 second. Kevin, you love his story and his transparency. Fantastic. I'm so glad. Let's see here. Bear with me.
Hey.
There you are. Fantastic.
I had to join with just an alternate email I made up. It wouldn't let me on. Really.
That is so weird. Let's see here. And if you noticed, we've had everybody posting one thing that they've been absolutely loving about the community so far. So that's what you'll see in your chat box.
Okay, and is Grant on, Dee?
No, I'm texting him right now.
Alrighty.
Let's see here. So we can get started. Basically, Roland, we've been having everyone just post one amazing thing that they love about the community so far. So that's what they're doing currently. Hello, Mr. Grant. Yes. Give me 1 second.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. And also appreciate you contributing. Everybody contributing is great. Barbara, happy Tuesday to you. Yes, Phil, let's buy Zoom and fix it for no money down. That'd be a good buy. That'd be a trick. I like it.
Roland, we may want to be about 5 minutes till Grant joins us. He's just running to his desk, so it'll be just a few more minutes.
Okay, cool. So, okay, so what did you ask everybody so far?
I asked everyone to post one amazing thing that they love about the community so far.
Nice, I love it. Fantastic. Cool, so let's also ask you guys so that we have lots of questions available. I'd love to know if you are at the point that you are ready to do a letter of intent in a deal. Please put LOI into the chat. LOI if you're ready. Okay, Peter's ready, Aaron's ready. This is great, fantastic. So we'll bring you guys on. Tony, Doug, Desmond, fantastic. Jody, close. Okay, Jody, you're close. Writing 2 up today, Tony. Okay, well, good timing for you. Phil's still reviewing financials, not quite ready for LOI. Okay, fantastic. Stumbled through it. No idea what you're doing, Barbara. Okay, fair enough. Great. Scott's not quite ready. Marco. Okay, cool. Excellent. Okay, and LOI close. Just got off the phone. Fantastic. Daryl, that's great. Yeah, that's good, Barbara. You're stumbling through the LOI, but you bought 2 businesses already. I like that. Review deals not ready. Okay, and look, so for all of you who are not yet ready, that's cool because we just released the first part of this today, right? So you're doing this from the challenge, which, you know, couldn't possibly be as complete as the information that you're getting now. So please, if you see people who are jumping ahead and doing deals, people in this group, some people are M&A people, private equity people who've run funds and acquired 17 companies, right? So please don't feel, this is for everyone. And one of the reasons you have so much training, so much opportunity to interact with all of us is you don't have to do that. And hopefully you watched the video that I made saying you don't have to do everything, right? But it's here if you want it. So if you're new to this and don't know the terms or anything like that, we're here to give you all of the support that you need. And you won't be doing an LOI yet because this is brand new to you. So today we're going to do this, and this will be available obviously as a recording for everybody. But today we're doing this so that for everybody who got super excited in the challenge and then actually went out and found a company, we're going to go through all of the key things on the letter of intent. And the letter of intent was one of, I don't know, did we release 23, I think, documents today? Yeah, 23 agreements that we released for you today with the first module. So the idea behind this session, and you don't even have to watch this. Like if you want to hop off because you're not anywhere near LOI and you really want to focus on finding, don't worry about it. It's going to be recorded. You can get it when you get to it. But for those of you that have the LOI, I thought this would be, or at that stage, this would be a really good opportunity to go through the actual document with Grant and me and get some answers to your questions. So
Grant is on. He's just on his, I think he's on. He's just not got a picture, but he's on here. Hey, Grant.
Okay.
Well, I'm on, and I don't know why there's not video. Let me see if I can figure out why that is here. Hold on, I apologize.
Bottom right corner, little picture of a video camera.
You would think, and I do these all the time, and I'm not understanding. Maybe it's a bandwidth thing, but just give me a moment. But I
okay.
Stand by.
Chris McClellan asked, where are the 23 documents? I believe those are in your Kajabi portal. Is that correct, Deanna?
That is correct. So those were all put into your Kajabi this morning around 8 a.m. If you don't have them, let me know. I've had about 4 or 5 today that for some weird reason didn't show up and we've had to fix it. But just ping me and I'll make sure that that's corrected for you.
And Chris, we do not make those documents available to anyone in the UK that operates a GPS locating fleet service. That's one of our carve-outs that we don't give the documents to people that have that. So if you happen to be in that kind of business, I know he's in that business. Anyway, okay. So, well, let's see. So any questions about, Chris says you're pivoting. Okay, cool. Do you guys have any specific questions about the letter of intent? I'd love you to put those in the chat right now if you do, and that way, as soon as we get Grant back on, and Zoom turned my screen completely black this morning in the middle of a presentation. So it's, I definitely know that it'll do that. And Deanna, you have clothed men walking behind you now instead of naked men. So that's a good upgrade.
Sorry.
Breakup clause, how do we implement it? Okay, we will answer that. Must we have it? It is not a requirement, Barbara. This is just pretty much the same thing as what you hear referred to as a term sheet. Term sheets are usually a little simpler, like maybe a page, and the ones that are letter of intent, usually in a little bit more formal kind of deal. Asset protection, Kathy says, we mentioned to make sure to have this. Can you describe what this means? So the only thing, Kathy, that you really need to be thinking about with respect to that is using the SPV. Remember the SPV, there he is the special vehicle. So that's what gets you that. And okay, so Grant, welcome from San Francisco.
I got it figured out. Sorry, the disconnect between the keyboard and the floor, that was me.
No problem. Okay, so what we're doing today is we're calling it LOI Mastery. So several of the folks, Grant, have found deals and are at the point where they need a term sheet or an LOI. And so we have one that you were kind enough to provide, your latest, greatest. So you want to frame a little bit of what it is, when you need it, when you don't, and then we'll kind of go into answering questions and reviewing the actual document.
Yeah, absolutely. So the LOI is, much like the keynote speech at a lecture, the first sentence of a great book. It's the document that not only sets out the most important terms in the agreement for you, it really will set the tone of the negotiation. In addition to the tone, so let's talk about some of the most important things that go into the LOI. One of Grant's rules on the LOI is anything that is a deal point for you needs to be in that LOI. Do not think that because the guy's really nice and we'll work it out later and that you have these great conversations on the golf course or wherever you may have them online or, in whatever format they may be, that later you're going to get anything that's not in that LOI. The amount of times where late in a deal there's tension, people, the first thing they do is they reach down, they grab that LOI out and they say, see, and they put it right up in your face, right? You didn't ask for those green M&Ms in the green room for the rock concert or whatever your request might be. Take care of me. Make sure I get a golden parachute. Make sure my children are employed. Anything that's important that's a deal point that they could possibly push back on if it's not in the LOI, you'll find that it'll be difficult to get at the end of the deal. In a lot of ways, the LOI is the mountain, and it kind of melts back to the deal if your deal isn't a super strong, desirable deal for any reason. So that's kind of the reason, the purpose for the LOI. Now, when you look at the LOI, some of the key things that I look for, Roland, are the amount of time. The longer a negotiation takes when someone's buying your company or when you're buying a company, but the longer that takes, usually that's better for the buyer because you've tied up the seller and they're mentally in a place where they want to make the deal. They're mentally in a place where they can see, the light at the end of the tunnel, whatever the exits may be. And you usually can get more concessions as time goes on. Now, that doesn't mean stretch out a negotiation and grind somebody. If a fair deal and you want to make it quick, keep it efficient, that's a great deal also.
But it does mean that for those of you who get frustrated and you're like, the deal went away, I blew it, or my offer wasn't good enough and they said no and that sucks, don't worry about that, because most often if it's a motivated seller, the deal only gets better for you as the buyer. So even when it's the seller that says no or gets upset or mad or whatever, which doesn't happen that much. It's funny, like probably the number one thing when, and Grant, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but like when you're dealing with somebody that hasn't done professional negotiation before, they're afraid that they're going to offend the other side and that's going to blow the deal up. That almost never happens, you know, like professional people listen to what you have to say and then rationally or emotionally say, nah, or yeah, right. They don't, how dare you offer, I can't even believe, right? That I've never seen that happen in a real deal, right? So number one, don't worry about that. Number two, whenever you get turned down, that is not a no as much as it is a not now. Even if they say, no way, I'm never going to do that deal ever, 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 and I really, really mean it, they'll still do it half the time. Your experience on that, G?
Well, you know, I think that's right. And everybody's different. I got to tell you, look, we bought and sold lots of companies for our clients. That's what I do as an attorney. And there's only been one case in now, you know, I've been an attorney for 30 years. There's only been one case. It happened to be only just a couple of years ago where we were far along in the deal and some lady said, you know what, this just doesn't feel right and I'm out. Once people have gotten to the place where
buyer or seller?
A seller, I apologize. Once people have gotten to the place where they have told themselves, all right, it's time to sell the company. I'm ready to move on. They visualized in their mind that there is a place other than them working 90 hours a day for this company they built for all the value, and they're about to cash in on the value. They've told themselves that whether they like the number or not, they're willing to take it, and they're willing to do it. And once you've had that conversation and they've indicated they're willing to do it, I don't think people appreciate how far along in the negotiation you are as a buyer, because they're there mentally, and then it's just all the art of helping them see the value in what they're doing, assuming there is value. And I said, I've only seen in 30 years of doing this one person just to say, you know what, I'm just going to miss the company too much. I'm not going to sell. I still want to go back to work 60 hours a week, just once. And that's a lot of deals.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So let's hop into the document. I'm going to share my screen so that we can pull that up. And Grant, let's walk through. Can everybody see this okay? Deanna, can you see it? G?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Cool. So let's just run through that. Do you want to talk about kind of go through from the preamble? We'll just walk through the clauses real quick.
Sure. Well, of course, the most important thing, or one of the most important thing, is to know who are the buyers and who are the sellers, what are we buying and what are we selling. So right in the first paragraph, it's really important to make sure that the people you're making the deal with on either side of a deal like this are the people that actually own the assets. And you'd be surprised. You'll get people saying, yeah, I'll sell you my company. And then later you find out it's their trust, or you find out it's some LLC they're in. And later they may or may not have clear title interest to those entities. So making sure you have the 100% owners in that first paragraph may be, frankly, the most important part of the document.
Yep. Okay. Go ahead.
And then if you move on down, you know, let's go down to number one here, purchase price and structure. Can you run that, or do you?
Yeah, no, I got it. So just kind of title-wise, right? We've got the parties, and then you're defining some terms there in parentheses, the transaction, the company, and so on and so forth. And then the description of accomplishments of the company, and then we get down to purchase price and structures, the very first thing.
Right. So then again, now we're talking, we move right into what the deal is. How much am I going to get paid, right? And how is that going to work, right? Purchase price and structure. How do I get my money, and what's the process for how that's going to happen? So this is, you know, you could not do a deal and expect it to work and explaining it in the summary fashion that we do in the LOI, right? Later in the stock purchase agreements, or the share purchase agreement, or the partnership purchase agreement, or the merger documents, or whatever the transactional documents are that perfect the transaction, you know, they'll have many, many pages that are going to, in a detailed way, cause the things in these paragraphs to occur. But these paragraphs, again, it's the starting place, and from that starting place, we expand into all the other issues you get as you move down the deal path. In any event, so notice the first few words there, based upon the financial and other information available to us to date. In any transaction, once you get past the LOI, there's two parts of a deal. There's business due diligence. That's where we come in and look at your books and records, and we do what we call the earnings test, right? We make sure you make as much money as you're telling us we're going to make. And if you get past the earnings test, then we go on to the other actual on-site and legal due diligence in a case typically. And that first sentence is probably the most litigated part of any deal, based upon the financial data. That's what, based upon the financial and other information. That's why, if I can take a moment, and Roland, I know we could spend days on any one of these documents, and I don't mean to, but at this point, this is like buying the used car and not having the mechanic look under the hood. When you're buying a company and it looks good and everybody's telling you everything, trust but verify. Make sure you get actual real-time, transactional documents for how they run their finances. And if you don't understand how to look at them, have somebody do that, because this is right here is where most deals fall apart. Now here, let's move on from the first sentence and get through this document here. There's a valuation, obviously, that they're going to just say how much you bought the company for, and the consideration is cash in closing. But we all know that right behind it says cash, it says there's also going to be escrows. Well, escrow means they're going to keep some of the cash to ensure that if there's any problems with their company, they have some buffer for the risk, right?
Now, let me just kind of for everybody, before you ask a million questions about this, your consideration might be different. So we have the whole deal stack. So the consideration might be attached as an exhibit A and might be 23 different things like accounts receivable, or this will happen this way, or whatever. So this is just an example. And so this is a cash deal because to keep this simple for you, but that is a place where you would insert that information about whatever the actual consideration, meaning what you're paying for the company is. Go ahead, G.
No, I think that's exactly right. And listen, there are as many types of deals as there are flavors of ice cream, right? Some of them have nuts and they will all melt at a certain temperature, right? If you don't keep it cool. But the point is that consideration is what it is. A lot of the deals I do are cash deals. People are trying to get bought out. I think that's what a lot of people want to do, especially nowadays. So then it just goes on to talk about some of the details of the escrow, 10% interest on what's in the, of the valuation is going to be what they're going to hold. That's pretty typical on a straight across deal, but you can negotiate anything. I've had some guys who say, nope, that's it. I just want to be out, no escrow. And they'll actually give you escrow insurance if you go and buy it at Lloyd's. I think that's pretty much it for this paragraph. That it's just a paragraph about how and when you get paid. These paragraphs here can be sometimes a page and a half long, the how to get paid part.
Right. Now you mentioned here, if subject to any potential issues arising out of the due diligence process, and then you've got the escrow holdback. So I didn't hear you talk about that basket, but do you want to mention that really quickly? Because that is pretty standard.
Sorry, I think I glanced off it too quickly. Let's say we do $10 million deal. Sometimes typically they'll want to hold back $1 million for a year or so that in the event that there's any liabilities that nobody anticipated that show up, they have an escrow sitting there, right? They don't have to go and sue you for it. They have that pot of money setting aside. Now, the due diligence process, again, has two parts, a business part and then an actual legal / what I call physical part. First, they look at your books and records, make sure that the company does what you say it does. And then if you say so, they want to come and meet the people. They want to come look at the company. They want to look at all of your documentation, the stuff the lawyers have, make sure the company has the structural integrity, legally speaking, to perform in a way that you're representing. And those are the two parts of diligence. Once you get past those two diligence period, then it's time to make the big thick stack of documents for you to sign before you get your check or you give a check, depending on what side you're on. The diligence, obviously, if during diligence we look at your company and we find out that we look under the hood and there's a lot of rust and the carburetor's missing, the price is going to change. And that's why if you're on the sell side, if you're in this conference because you're considering selling at any time, there's some really fundamental things you can do to keep your company in order that we'll talk about as we go through this. But also when you're on the buy side, those same things apply. When you look at the hood, look under the hood, and you see something that's missing that you expect there, that's usually an opportunity to improve your negotiating leverage.
Yeah. So then the next thing, it says this offer represents a multiple of approximately X. And that is really cool because it shows how the valuation was determined, which gives you some wiggle room in the event that your due diligence establishes that the EBITDA is less. Then that would be something you would go back and argue should impact the purchase price. As a matter of fact, I remember we had a deal where we were buying a national tire chain in Australia, and we had agreed on the multiple. And then the EBITDA, when the adjusted numbers came back from the audit, they were significantly lower than the seller had expected them to be and lower than he had warranted to us that they would be. So the purchase price fell significantly as a result of that. So that's an important thing to consider when you're valuing based on multiple, which we frequently are.
Absolutely, and that's how that ties into the diligence part above, because the diligence may lead them to find a reason to have a lower EBITDA or higher, depending on the process. Go ahead.
Yeah. So now in the next sentence here, he talks about the valuation assumes the company is acquired on a debt-free basis. Now, remember that we're talking about carve-outs as options. We talk about maybe assuming debt or taking subject to and not requiring them to pay it off. Because remember, the seller frequently is going to take all the money that you give them, and then you require, if this clause, which is a standard clause that would be in an attorney agreement, right, is in there, then the seller has to pay off the debt, which is fair because you're supposed to get a company free of debt. But you can say instead, as one of our creative things, we're taking subject to, or we're assuming the debt, in which case this would change. So one of you asked, how do we mask the no money out of pocket thing? It's not masked. It's all up front. You don't have to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. You just don't say, I'm going to buy your company for no money, and I'm going to have your company pay me to buy your company. That's dumb, right? That's just a dumb approach. But in the actual deal, it's just these things that we're talking about now are going to be different, because maybe instead of, if we go back up here, instead of the consideration will be at cash and closing, it's going to be different. It's going to be other stuff that we put on an exhibit. And instead of the company is going to be acquired on a debt-free basis, it's going to be acquired subject to, or with an assumption or something like that, right? So that's how we get the no money out of pocket without rubbing the seller's face in the deal saying we bought your company with your company, right? Now, Grant, I know the working capital adjustment is one of the biggest things that that come to play. Do you want to talk about that part there for a minute? I'm hoping all this highlighting that I'm highlighting shows up as highlighted on yours too.
It is for me, and I think it's helpful.
Good.
It's working just fine.
Okay, good.
So, listen, I'm going to try to summarize it in a sentence or two, because you would be surprised at how much time we spend in the deal working on the working capital adjustment, because what it is on a certain date when the company's sold, we're all going to agree a certain amount of money's in the company. But it never works that way, right? There's always a sparkless water bill or some bill or some income that's anticipated that comes in, that maybe comes in, maybe doesn't. So what we usually do is we close the date, we assume a certain amount of money's we close the transaction. We assume a certain amount of money is in the company, and then we wait a certain amount of time. And at that time, we look and we say, hey, was as much money in the company as we thought it would be? And if it, depending on how true that statement is, we make an adjustment. There's a payment maybe out of the escrow to get to actually true up that event so that everybody's getting what they expect. And that's basically what that is in the simplest way I can explain it.
Yeah, that's great. And then you want to talk about the no material continue to operate going concern type stuff there?
Well, this is, what you're really saying here is you're doing everything as you have, that there's been no real change. And I think I'll sum it up like that. Again, on any of these paragraphs, if you want me to talk for a couple hours, I will, because I like talking clearly. So just let me know. But I think that's basically what we're saying here is, hey, you're buying what you sold me, right?
Yeah, exactly. So A is just the ordinary course of business. You're not going to do crazy things that you didn't do. B is the key employees that are going to be retained. So you might want to specify those. You might want to keep it generic like this is, but basically it's like, not, we're going to close and then everybody leaves. And then,
and since you touched it, I will touch it. It's very common in a deal, once you get to the point where you pass the diligence and you're actually what we're calling papering the deal, you're about to sign it. At that time, we reach out to the key employees. A lot of times they may or may not know what's happening with the sale of the company, and we'll reach out to them and we'll have them sign new employment agreements and disclosing to them the fact of the transaction, so that we know when we close, they're going to be there. And a lot of times you throw them a bone to do that if they're quality people.
right, exactly. The C then, all third-party consents with respect to material contracts. Do you want to just quickly say what that is, G?
Sure. Most typically, 90% of the time, a consent that's required is a landlord. It's someone who you want to take over the business, the plant, and the operations, but a lot of times there's many leases, and all those lessors, whether it's equipment or real property, you're going to have to get their consents. Every so often, you need a board approval, or there's a particular owner who has a right of first refusal, but otherwise, consent, that's what a consent is.
Yeah. Okay. And then how about that one there?
So what you're saying is that, a lot of times contracts have a term that says if there's a material change in your company, I don't have to do business with you anymore. And what you're saying here is that you don't have any of those kinds of contracts.
Cool. And then who is you in this case, Grant?
Well, you, this is a purchase.
Right?
Yeah, you as the seller.
Yeah. Okay. So basically it's just saying we relied on your stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's.
And then integration is usually one of the more challenging parts, which happens after the deal is closed. Do you want to chat about what you're trying to accomplish with that clause?
Well, listen, it's funny that you asked, because this clause doesn't really have a lot of weight to me in many transactions, but a lot of times when you're buying companies, the people who are helping you with the transaction are the management of the company that you're buying. And you always want to put a paragraph that's in there that says, we're really excited about you and we're going to grow together, because you are excited and you do hope that happens, even whether or not you intend to keep the management.
Yeah, this is kind of a stroking clause, which is in the law, we have agreements to agree, and agreements to agree are not enforceable. So frequently, to make somebody feel good, you'll put something in a contract for something you can't work out now that you want to work out later, so you can get the deal done, but work out that issue later. And it's like, the parties agree to discuss how we will integrate one company with another as soon as this transaction is closed. Well, that's an agreement to agree in the future, which doesn't provide any weight of law or enforcement to do anything about, but makes people feel good, right?
It does. And remember, I said, but the LOI has, two important parts. One is to break down these specific terms, and the other is to set a tone. And if this is not a hostile transaction, it's helpful to say in there, especially if you like the management, we really do want to work with you. Please don't leave.
Yeah. So the next one, 3, is basically saying that for this to be binding on everybody, we still like to do the deal. The due diligence has to be done. The definitive agreement, which is usually an asset, stock, or equity purchase agreement, has to be done, which is usually a big, long agreement, much more complicated than this for a complex transaction, but can be a few pages if it's not. And then final board approval. Grant, why is board approval required if it's a company?
If you look, again, this is written from the seller side. This is this is a buyer letter. This is a buyer LOI. The buyer, this is lawyering here, folks. This is me creating as much, whoops, we don't want to marry you after all, honey, room as we can do. And that's really, if I could have put 9 things there and it wouldn't spook them, I would. Board approval, the sun has to be in the right part of the sky. The tides have to be aligned just right. You want as much, obviously, flexibility in a deal. You want to be fair to everybody always, but you want to have as much flexibility as you can, reasonably negotiate. And that's, that's really what that is. Board approval is that phantom mysterious thing that I will if I want to.
I like it. And also, you've hidden in here the mysterious and often overlooked section 3C. Do you want to talk about kind of what you were what you were going for there?
No, you have to. I'm sorry. There's going to be a special class after that we'll charge you a lot for that.
I love it. Okay, legal documentation. What is that? What are we saying here?
Well, this says we don't have a deal based on this LOI. It's what I said to you all here. And you'd be surprised how many people say, hey, we had an LOI, therefore we have a deal. And that's not true. We have a letter of intent, and we don't have a deal until we actually write it out in the big, thick, super expensive, high legal fees. I'm kidding. But sometimes maybe if you're lucky. But until we have a final stock purchase agreement, share purchase agreement, membership purchase agreement, whatever it may be, we don't have a deal.
Okay, cool. And now this isn't a definitive list of due diligence stuff, right? Because I know that your checklist is fairly more extensive than this, but these are overall categories of due diligence.
Sure. And each of these bullet points is going to expand into many subtopics. So this is kind of a 10,000-foot view of what the due diligence was going to be in this particular. This LOI I took from one of the deals that I liked because it had lots of good parts for us to talk about, a lot of things that I thought would be valuable for everybody here to work with. Yep. So whatever it was in this deal, those were going to be the 10. There might be in our deals or the deals we have with these folks here, we may have some extra different bullet points.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And then what about the exclusivity thing? Why is that there, and what is it trying to accomplish?
This is we're only going to date each other. I think of an LOI as kind of like an engagement, and marriage is kind of closing the deal, right? Consummating the deal. And when you're engaged, it's just you and me, and it's nobody else, right? And that's really what the concept here is, because obviously who wants to be in a deal negotiating to try to finalize terms that you said you'd take, whether you're the buyer or you're the seller, you said you'd take those terms. And the whole process now is just how we making sure everything's true that we all said, and then how we get that done. It's not that we're in an auction. And if we're going to be in an auction, tell me we're in an auction.
Right.
But I don't want to be in an auction. I want to get this deal done. You want to get this deal done. If somebody comes along in the middle, says they'll pay more, so what? If we can get the deal done, we should.
So, Grant, I don't think we'll have, because we're getting to the more boilerplatey things. Tell us about breakup clauses, and where are they appropriate, and where a fee gets paid in the event of a deal not happening?
Sure. A breakup clause is a clause that usually charges one side or the other with the costs of going through all of this process, the LOI and the due diligence. And they're fairly rare nowadays. They were more common, I think, years ago, and I'm not sure why. But really, a lot of times you'll have a seller who is making some astounding claims about their earnings and their ability to make me a lot of money. As I'm coming along as a buyer, I'll tell you what, I'll look at you, seller, but if I look under the hood of the car and I decide that there's no engine, or that there's something that is clearly was good cause for me to break up or terminate the LOI, then you're going to pay me for having to come and look. And that really disincentivizes people who are trying to pull one over on sellers, because you would be surprised how many people have spreadsheets and great glossy photos for their companies. And it really takes a digging to determine that it's, you watch Shark Tank, right? It takes only getting under the surface level to find out there's no real value in the companies. And buyers will use that to protect themselves in usually limited cases, but you will see them.
Yeah. Cool. And then 7, we're basically saying each party pays its own expenses, but I will say that it is not uncommon in several deals I have seen for the acquiring company to ask the company to pay the expenses of the acquisition, which is annoying, but is something that is done fairly often as well. Expiration, why do we want an expiration date, G?
You listen, especially as the seller. Remember, I think time's on the side of the buyer. That's Grant's general rule, especially because, look, COVID can come along, right? So many things can happen. The world turns upside down every night. People fall off, things change. And you can quote me on that. And all
right, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of like ice cream, but it melts eventually. And in any event, we want to get this process over. We don't want to be strung out. We want some closure, especially if you're a seller.
Cool. So Kathy Norris asked, is there a MAC clause, a material adverse conditions change? And Kathy, it is kind of up there. It will be for sure in the definitive agreement, but you can see here that it says that we're assuming that they're doing everything like they said they would, and that there's no, let's see, where was it? There was another one here too.
Well, Roland, you've got subject to due diligence, and so that really builds any material changes are going to come out in due diligence, and that affects the price. So that's where that's usually dealt with for me. Yeah,
there's three places though where you kind of are saying it's going to you're going to continue to do. Oh, there we go. You're not going to go with other people. You're going to have everything operate the way that we said it was. All of that is, and all of those things are giving you those outs, Kathy, just so you know. Okay, governing law, should we do that under the English law? Should we do it in Kansas? What do you think, G? Any thoughts on that?
This is a super important term. I did a deal of purchasing a company for a fund just a year ago from England. And, just when you think a clause like this isn't a big deal, I mean, how different can the English way of doing laws? Well, it was super different, and it's a big deal. Now, within the U.S. is what we normally look at, but especially if you're a company that has any kind of international base or international transaction, this is a big deal. In the U.S., it isn't a big deal, but my general rule of thumb is make sure you litigate close to home.
Yep, exactly.
And by the way, go ahead. That's fine. That's fine.
By the way, no, let's hear it.
Now, listen, I'll keep you guys here all night. Let's keep going.
Okay. Public announcement. What do we think about that? Why is that in there?
Well, many times it is, for this was done right here, this particular document I was done where a large fund was purchasing a business, and they have shareholders to report to, and they always want good news out there, good press, good internet, good buzz. And so if they go and spend their millions and millions and tens of millions of $100 millions of dollars, they want to get any upkick that they can. It may affect their stock prices. It may affect the perception of the management with the shareholders. That's a big reason. Tell you the other big reasons, a lot of times the law firms want to be mentioned in them too, to show off that they did this big deal. That's why I have it in.
I like it. Okay. And so why are we doing this whole thing if it's of no binding effect? Is that really just to pay attorneys fee more documents?
Well, of course. And paying the attorney is the most important part of the whole deal. But all joking aside, it's what we said earlier. We want to, we're dating now. We want to make sure that this is a good commitment to make forever. And it's not binding. It is the engagement period. And if it's going to happen, it's going to happen with the big documents later. But this sets out the process of how we get there. That's reinforcing that concept.
Yeah, I think it's just a way to try to get everybody on the same page, literally, without it being binding. So this gives us that period of talking about those kinds of things. The transaction timing, we want to know, Grant, that there's nothing really that's going to stop this, and everybody's going to move forward to get the thing done, right? That's why that's there.
That's exactly right.
Okay, and why are we naming the transaction team?
Well, because this really sets up this is really all about block and group emails, frankly, in a sense. We want to know who to talk to about whatever the issue may be.
We had the last deal that we did. Do you remember? I think it was 38 people that were copied on almost every email.
In the beginning, it's maybe a principal of a company and a principal of another company, the buyer and the seller. And then they talk, and then they include their lawyers, and then the lawyers include the accountants, and they exchange some information initially, and then we get to an LOI, and then it generally expands who's on these emails. But by the end, we need to talk about the business diligence and the legal diligence and the physical due diligence of the company. People involved in that are obviously all have to be designated here. Who am I allowed to talk to? Who shouldn't I talk to? I have to tell you that let's talk about just, if you have a couple minutes, let me talk to you about the psychological effect of selling your company on your company, because we all are thinking from our perspective, but listen, this is going to be a good deal. I'm going to make more money. I'm going to buy a company. I'm going to sell the company, whatever it might be. But your company's not valuable if you don't have your good people. A lot of times if you're selling and you're selling to a competitor or someone maybe you don't know, like a fund, you will be surprised how many people get nervous and jump ship. And so it has a profound psychological effect, usually on the employees of the company that is being sold. And so it is usually, and what if we do a deal and it never goes through? I don't want to lose my key people because they're concerned that I might be selling the company. So a lot of times in these agreements are going to be accompanied with non-disclosure agreements and covenants to keep it secret within a certain group of people. And we'll designate here you can talk to in this list, and anybody else, don't talk to them, because you don't know what damage you might do to the buyer or the seller in this situation. Not to mention, if it's a public company, there's all the insider trading laws. And so it's very important to have a clear chain of command of who you should be talking to, especially from the LOI phase on.
Okay, and Peter asked Grant, although we don't want them involved generally, should there be a clause about a broker's fee?
No, because the broker's fee, listen, the broker's fee is, there will be a clause in the final document that says, hey, seller, you've paid your own broker's fees. That's your deal. You've handled it, or dealing with how the broker might be paid out of escrow. That will be in the final document, but I don't typically see that in the LOI. Again, the ultimate LOI, think about it, the most perfect LOI that could ever be conceived is the final document, right? With all its attachments, which is an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I want to compliment you on the t-shirt that you're wearing. I'm particularly fond of the logo that's on that t-shirt. That's our War Room Mastermind for those that don't know. Okay, Grant, so now it's signed with a CC and then agreed, accepted. Can you tell us, is there anything important about those parts, or just kind of that's good?
There's nothing significant. I think we've all signed agreements before and seen sign off. This is just that part of it.
Okay, great. So let's see. Peter said, can we confirm when this LOI is coming into the deal process? I have a clarification question about LOI being used before the target has considered a set valuation. So you want to talk about when do we usually talk about this? Is this, hey, we've had conversations, we've got generally an idea, we've worked out kind of what we think we're going to pay for it. Where do you do this, G?
This is the art of the deal. So I'm going to hit that ping pong ball back to you, because here's what I've seen. What I see typically is an LOI after a fairly mature informal negotiation where the powers that be, two individual buyers and sellers, a fund and a seller, whatever combination, have kind of met informally and had some discussions over a napkin, it may be a martini, who knows, and have gotten an idea of what they all know, what they think their companies are worth. Other people know what they think they're going to buy. Those lines cross, and we have this informal agreement that usually then ends up in the LOI. Now, having said that, there are cases of guys, gals, companies out there who will look at companies in their space, pick from their own ability to estimate what those companies are worth, and just send the LOIs out and say, hey, look, you've got a week to answer. And they on a volume basis, it's worked for some people.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we can pull Peter up and get a little bit more clarification.
So I hope that was a good answer with no definite time.
Say that again?
I apologize. No, I was just saying I think I gave it, there's no right time. It really depends on who the buyer and seller are.
Okay. I don't know. This is the webinar version of Zoom. So Deanna, I'm not sure how to pull.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, you want Peter?
Yes. Peter Lang.
Right here. Okay, Peter, you should be allowed to talk, sweetie.
Nice.
I can.
Here you are.
Hey, Peter, can we see you too?
I do not have the option.
Hold on, I can do it real quick. Hold on. You should be allowed now, sweetie.
Look at her. Now Deanna's taken all of Matt's secret powers.
I have control.
I don't see the control for it, but
Should be, if you're on a phone or a computer, if you touch it, if you have to, then it's a little picture of a video camera down at the bottom on the left.
Yeah, I made you a panelist, Peter.
Bottom left.
There we go.
Are you there? There you are.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the panel.
I brought wine, but that's not the point. So my question is this. We have 3 in a mutual NDA process. And in the past, I've not used the LOI to define such specific terms. I used vague language around the conditions because I was doing the due diligence after the LOI. But I've since kind of changed my structure for the companies that we're approaching who do not have or aren't prepared to sell. So therefore they don't have a valuation. So I'm doing what I would call a business deep dive due diligence, where I'm trying to get all the financials, kind of the commercial and the legal side covered before even structuring the LOI. And that's my question is, when is it appropriate if the seller doesn't have a clear value, a clear understanding of their business, their offer at this time?
Well, that's a great advantage to you, because as long as you're in a position to get all the possible known data, as long as the cost isn't too high, and you're getting all the known data you can about this entity before you make your offer, that's really going to put you in the best position to come in and know what the potential of the company is. It still come into to the sellers and say, hey guys, man, I looked under your hood and I've got some concerns about some items. What do you think's a fair price? So I really think that's a unusual situation that you're going to have that kind of access to the seller. I mean, Roland, isn't that a great advantage in the negotiating?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the clarification is a lot of the people who are approaching have never gone through a deal before. Mm-hmm. So the order of operations, whether or not they're appropriate, from their vantage point, every question I ask, they're also leaning on us to kind of guide them through this process, recommend when to reach out to an attorney, and they're kind of at the starting point. They're under $1 million, which were the targets of the Epic Challenge. Mm-hmm. And so we're looking at them and saying, well, let's go through some informal or structured due diligence. And from there, we can sit side by side, still in Roland's language, to construct a deal that makes sense for it to be win-win, since you don't have a defined valuation or structure or interest at this time.
Yeah, and in several of those deals, you might not have an LOI. You might just go straight from that collaborative stuff into, okay, you've written down your notes, and you say, okay, so this is the deal. Yeah, this is the deal. Great. Okay, let's put it into an agreement, and then you don't have the LOI at all, right? So that's totally fine.
Okay, you can do that.
Yeah. Let me just tell you a perfect example of that is I have had some clients who have created strategic alliances with suppliers. And over time, those alliances actually grew into the companies merging, and there was never an LOI there. So it's a version of that. You can work your way into a deal easily.
Well, that's helpful to note. So LOIs aren't required on certain deals that are a little bit more casual in nature that lead straight to a term. Okay.
I mean, the truth is they're never required. It's just something that helps facilitate the transaction because it gets the preliminary agreements, like the major deal points, down onto a paper that both parties say, yeah, this is how we're going to go forward. So
now, the lawyer is going to say, you are a fool not to have one, absent a very significant prior relationship.
Mm-hmm. But in a smaller deal, too, it's your call, And like I said,
in a smaller deal, I've seen LOIs that were just emails.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about it. Hey, listen, it sounds good. I'll buy your company for $200,000 all day. You get all the assets. I'll keep the company. Let's go. Great, simple deal done. That was it. That's the LOI. There was none of, the LOI we did today was just to show all the, what the possibilities are for a large deal.
Exactly. We included what you called, I forget the term, but the condition that says we will evaluate that at a future date and come to that decision. We put that in the conditions. We also put that into the approach of the deal structure itself. So we didn't have to declare that we were interested in an asset purchase on the onset, because we weren't, we didn't want to scare them off with having to explain what an asset purchase is before we've even got them comfortable with how the deal can be constructed. So
exactly. And you might choose to or not to put the details about that ultimately will be how you're paying for the company with the company in there as well. Those might come later. You can agree on a purchase price. How that purchase price is going to be paid, can be negotiated over the next few weeks or months while you're getting to your definitive agreement. Cool. Okay. Thank you, Peter. Grant, you got one last thing on that?
I would just say to Pete, if he's doing deals that size, and I've seen guys who do lots of deals in that space, you may also want to make sure the person on the other side has an attorney look and review and sign off on the deal. That could add almost nothing to the deal side. And boy, I'll tell you what, in terms of deal insurance, it's awesome.
Yeah, and what the feedback that I had was accountants are terrible people for them to go do first. Lawyers are better because they'll be told some crazy number that will mess up valuation, whereas attorney will just make sure that they're following the process well.
Yeah,
well,
a good attorney.
And, what you talked about right there in your comment to me is what we call valuation, and that's the art of this, right? What's it really worth, right? What's it really worth? Because if you're getting it for less than it's really worth, that's the deal. Or if it has some great, structural advantage to you, fine. But that also means it's worth something more than it is today. And that's the art of this. Attorneys, accountants, guys in the space, it's tough to find people who really know how to value business as well and really see the opportunities. Usually it takes someone in the same space to do it.
So, cool. Well, thank you, Peter. I'm going to move on and hop on these other questions real quick so we get off by the end of the hour. We've got 5 more minutes. Gabriel Grant says he sold his company last year with a broker. Basically, they did the LOI at a high cash price to lock in the due diligence, and then a week and some modicum of due diligence later came in 35% less with no real arguments as to why. He thought it was just a strategy, and he rejected and canceled. And he's on the buyer side saying he has mixed feelings about using an LOI in the same manner. Any suggestions? Man, I think that's a crappy way to do business. I would not recommend that you do that. I think you want to be forthcoming and transparent with people and expect that back. So that would be a big turnoff for me as well. G?
I will, and you get the folks who out there who do that, who think they're smarter than everybody else and they're going to take some. It never really works in the long run to do that to somebody in a deal. I suppose you'll catch somebody distressed or panic or blink every so often and steal a deal from them. But I've never seen that business practice really be effective. Listen, by the time that a real company and a real buyer get together, by the time they're in the LOI, usually you've developed some sort of rapport or trust and understanding of who these people are. And so I don't see that too often, because usually by the time we're in the LOI, we've come to have a reason to trust.
Cool. Mark asks that, one bad thing about Zoom is it puts everything up. Mark asked if there is a rule of thumb, like 1% of deal size for legal fees. Like if their deal's $1 million, what would they expect to pay in legal fees? And also, would you accept those later or as a piece of the deal or contingency or something like that?
It is most common for me to be paid in the closing of the deal. Now, my client is guaranteeing all of my hours. If the deal doesn't close, I have to go back to my client and have them pay for all of my hours. So that's why both my client and I have a vested interest in making sure that this is a deal that's going to close, because I don't want to collect money from my client for a deal that didn't close. That isn't good for either of us. So I want to make sure if I'm in a deal with them that I really think that it's going to get there. And I typically do get paid out of the close of a deal. Most attorneys do in any deal of any real size. Really small ones, I'm sure you could be paid hourly. And then there was another part to that question. It got away from me. I apologize.
What a percentage? Is that typically like a percentage of the deal, or is it hourly, or what?
Listen, look, think about it. A $250,000 deal isn't going to get the diligence of a $250 million deal, and it isn't the same percentage. You probably could never do any real deal and any real diligence for much less than 50 grand in attorney's fees, all in, looking at the diligence, looking at the accounting, look at all of that. It can be tough to do if you're using a law firm from start to the end. You can do a lot on your own. We can talk about that later in other sessions, or if people want to have questions about how to do that, they can email me. But you can do a lot on your own, but it's tough to get out for less than that. And then it's also tough. Imagine if I'm Starbucks, how many different units have to go and be inspected. The diligence in that deal could actually be, as millions and millions of dollars. Now, that may not be a high percentage of Starbucks net worth, but at the same time, there's other franchises where that same diligence could actually be as much as 4 or 5% of the net worth of the company. And that would be high. If you were going to pin me down and throw rocks at me, I would say between 1% and 3% of the deal above 20 million.
There you go. Okay, so let's see. Desmond asked if an LOI could be used to prevent the seller from taking out the working capital before closing.
Well, look, as long as you agree in the LOI what the working capital number is, the seller can take all the money out they want, so long as on the date of close, the agreed upon number is in that bank account.
Exactly. Cool. Okay, well, I think that's about all of the questions. I think this is really helpful because so many people were asking about the LOI, and this was probably the #1 most requested agreement, Grant. And thank you for hanging out here and answering these. So the very last one we'll do is Daryl. And I see there's a couple Q&As, Dee, for people that followed the actual process.
Yes, there is.
Works, which I'm bad at. So let's answer Daryl's quick. He says, looking for a manufacturer with real estate, should we use separate LOI or add to this one? Looking for a manufacturing company with real estate, should he use a separate LOI or add to this one?
I would use this LOI as a learning experience of what a potential deal might look like. Every LOI is so different than the other. And so you may want to take the basic structure of this, but make sure you look at your current deal and think about clauses that aren't in that might need to be there. Also, really find a good attorney. If you're going to buy a company, if you're going to go out and do any business transaction over 50 grand, it's worth an hour or two of a very experienced attorney's time to look at. They may look at it at the beginning and say, oh, this is huge. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and you may not want to do it. But they may also be able to look at that first LOI guides the whole rest of the deal. And you may want to have them involved in the beginning so you have less problems later. Okay.
And then David asked, not on LOI, but NDAs. He's been signing them without close attention left and right. Anything to worry about and look for in that?
Oh, no. And I'll send you some blank checks too, David.
Yeah, definitely. Don't do that. Don't sign NDAs that you don't, I mean, try not to sign them unless you have to, like in a deal, like you're to the point. I get people all the time that want to have me sign an NDA about an idea. I had somebody that wanted to send me about investing in a private equity fund the other day. I just say no, because you're like, then you're exposing you're accepting a duty not to disclose that does not exist unless you sign that. And usually you don't have to sign it. So if you're going to get the financial statements and confidential information from a company, then it makes sense to think about it then. And only then you need to go through the agreement and be sure that it has the standard exceptions to not disclosing, right? And Grant, do you have those off the top of your head, or?
I think my only comment is what he said.
Yeah. So usually it's like you want to have a clause. I think it's 4 things. You say basically will not disclose any information, but it does not apply to information already in the possession without violation of another obligation not to disclose of the receiving party. The information that was independently developed by the receiving party without violation of an obligation not to disclose. Information that came into the possession of the receiving party without violating one of those. And then there's information that is publicly available or in the public domain, right? So those are 4 really powerful exceptions that ought to be in every agreement, because maybe what they're giving you isn't actually confidential, right? So don't ever sign one of those unless you're at the point of actually getting truly confidential information. Sure as heck never an idea or, look at my fund where I want you to invest or something like that, because then what if you subsequently invest in or open a fund that does what theirs does, and they're like, oh, they saw mine and they took the idea and they were under an obligation not to disclose. That's really a bad position to put yourself in. So don't randomly sign these promiscuous NDAs, okay? Cool. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody, and appreciate you being here. So we are, Deanna, what's next? I don't have any idea because I know there's so many things going on.
So tomorrow kicks off the first start of the coaching calls. So the coaching call tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central with Coach Adam Lyons, and you should have that link in your email and in the Facebook group. And then if you are in group 1 or group 2, small groups of Coach Chris, those are tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 and at 3:30. And then if you are in small groups 1 and 2, Coach Adam, those are at 2:30 and 4:30 tomorrow. I'm having to remember. So there's a lot going on tomorrow.
Right. And again, don't get overwhelmed. This is all to help you, not to freak you out. So you can have as much help as you want, and you can say, I got this. I'm a deal person. I already know all this. Don't have to be there. It's just there to help you if you want it. The schedules are all posted in the Facebook group, Dee?
Yeah, they're in the Facebook group. They've also received all emails again today as well as yesterday. So you're going to get bombarded because I want to make sure that once you get this for this first week, you get it down, and then I'll quit bothering you, I promise. But I'll send one more email tomorrow morning as well, just to remind everyone.
Marty, no one knows how she keeps all this in her head. No one knows. And should you review the challenges again, Jonathan? No, I would not. You have everything that you need coming out. You can if you want to, but everything is covered in greater detail in the materials that are coming out that got released today and over the next 8 weeks than it was in the challenge. And Deanna, thank you as always. Grant, thank you as always. Appreciate you guys being here. We'll see you guys all in the very, very near future.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.